Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you. You are a life coach, leadership coach, executive coach, all of the above. And your website is amazing. And if you guys didn't have a chance to look at her website, please do. Um, it's incredible. Anyway, so I'm just going to turn it over to you and help all of us. How's that?
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Be motivated.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for spending your morning with me this morning, and it's an honor to be here. And I did hear, as some of you spoke, there's a lot of resonating things in my own life. I have been a teacher. In fact, I am teaching right now, and I'll tell more about that, how that came about as we get going. And like Brandon, when you said that you were in China and Korea, I spent a year teaching English in Korea a long time ago. It's funny to say that it was like 25 years ago, but that profoundly influenced a lot of what I do. So resonating factors all around. And thank you also for giving a little detail about what you're looking for this morning. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. Michelle, I think you need to, or Nick, need to enable screen sharing. We good? Okay. And by the way, my website was done by Sarah Leisinger, who is a freelancer in the area, and she offers marketing strategy and social media communications packages, and she's a super talented individual. Let's see. Can you see my screen? Finishing Strong in 2020, 3 practices for your business and life, by me, Andrea Happel. Okay, I need to make sure I can advance. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so 2020 has been a year. I work with a SCORE mentor who told me a joke about 2020. He said, guy walks into a bar in Louisiana. He says, give me a Corona with 2 hurricanes. And the bartender says, that'll be 2020. Silly, but nice. It's part of our tendency to make light of what's going on. We have had lockdown with COVID. We've had hurricanes. I didn't realize New York and the whole eastern seaboard was hit with a hurricane on August 5th. I found that out after our derecho. Forest fires, it's not just the American West, it's a lot of our southeast area. Things are going on, and there's unrest, there's demonstrations, a lot of things are happening, leading to a lot of loss. Loss of time, loss of business, loss of personal connections. Let's not overlook the loss of education and, like, I mean, people in nursing homes that have lost time with their family. It's definitely a struggle. Here's an article by JENNIE MORTON. I can throw this into the chat. Let's see. Well, I can put it in the chat later. How's that? JENNIE MORTON wrote a piece for NPR. She's a freelance writer in Cedar Rapids. Islands have a tragedy playbook. When a family is in trouble, we rally to set things right. But what do you do when every single household in your city experiences collective trauma? I feel like in that article, she nailed it how I was feeling, and probably a lot of you can resonate with that too. So now what? I'm probably going to be joined by my cat, the classic Zoom. Okay. We have a tendency to kind of brush it off, laugh at it, and I think that humor, if we can find something to laugh at, that can be helpful. Like this picture I took of a car with a transformer box. I don't have the picture to show you, but the transformer box had just smashed in the roof, and the picture said, "For sale, runs great, new sunroof." Okay, it's kind of like you laugh to keep from crying. But we also have a tendency to minimize what's going on and to just kind of say, gosh, I just want 2020 to be over. Let's crawl under the covers and wait till about half past May of next year. However, as leaders in our community, and we all are leaders in some way, this is our time to step up and to find the way where there doesn't seem to be a way, and to show solidarity and to serve others. It's not the year's fault that these things happened. These things could happen at any time. And so instead of choosing like to be victims of this year and these things which have happened, let's reframe that concept and start finding opportunity. So think about what you have seen recently. What opportunities have opened up as a result of this 2020, all the things that have happened in 2020? And then furthermore, what opportunities can we create as business leaders? And if you want to throw that into the chat, then I can see kind of at a glance. I'm not sure how the chat works with the screen share, but we'll find out. Or if anybody has something to say to opportunity. Let's see, Emily, or no, does anybody have a thought to share?
I had put something in there, but I'm fine talking too if you guys don't
great.
care.
I can't see. Oh, I see now, chat.
That's right. So like
Yes.
for me, and I think a lot of people, and it's not necessarily business related, but I think the biggest opportunity that we've had this year is just more time, more quality time with our family. A lot of us, I mean, I have a son that's a senior at Linn-Mar this year, and you know, just having that extra time with him like in March and April as he was finishing out the school year online last year, and then as we prepared for his senior year this year, just having that extra time at home that I never would have had because I've never not had a job. So to just be home and have that time with my family and really putting that back into perspective, kind of the balance between our careers and our family and personal life, I think that's been for me like the biggest opportunity I've had. But also from a business leading standpoint, just the opportunity to get out of your comfort zone and try on different hats and see what else is out there and not be afraid to go for more than what you've had before, you know, to be selective when you can be, and but also see new challenges that you never thought you would take on.
Thank you for saying that, Sean. Nick says, it's forced you to discover new ways of doing work and forced us to get comfortable with them. Absolutely. Brandon says, we're being shown a number of huge flaws in our infrastructure, including health, tech, and education, and it's an opportunity to revitalize and restructure. Totally agree. How should we act at this time? ACT spells act, and so I've made a little framework to describe 3 practices that I've found helpful in 2020. So A is for acknowledge. Acknowledgement is a gift. We can acknowledge what people have accomplished, experienced, what they've given. We can acknowledge for ourselves what we have mistakenly done, left undone, or done that hurt someone, even if it was unintentional. let's not forget to acknowledge our own grief, loss, and pain, even just to ourselves. That's a gift we can give ourselves. Instead of bypassing the emotion that we're feeling, we are allowed to feel all the emotions that go with grief, loss, and pain. And if we suppress it or brush it off, it's probably going to show up again later. How powerful is it to say, I acknowledge I am feeling a lot of grief right now over the loss of, and fill in the blank. And once you do that, it's like your body and your mind will respond with, okay, we understand that. It's like a huge sigh of relief. Here are some other things we can acknowledge. Thoughts, both for ourselves and others. Thoughts, dreams, pain, efforts, expertise, experience, compliments, receive a compliment. Some of us have trouble with that. And talents. So let's apply this now if you're thinking about business or culture or personally, how can you acknowledge what needs to be acknowledged right now? Where are you being called to acknowledge? And you can put that into the chat or raise your hand. I can't see everybody at the same time, but I'll scan through. Jim?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind probably is from a business perspective, we sometimes get pretty pushy, where we want things to get done right now, and especially entrepreneurs, I think, are they're really driving to get things done, and maybe this has caused us to step back a little bit and in some instances maybe be a little bit more patient with ourselves and with others.
Thank you for that. Brandon.
When the lockdown started, I asked myself, where do I want to be, or who do I want to be when this is all said and done? And I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way, and that whole Stoic philosophy. So I thought, okay, in terms of business, I'm thinking, well, my school has closed down. I don't have much going on, so I got into studying digital marketing and moving in that direction, just educating myself. And then personally, I've used that time to do a lot of meditation, a lot of exercise, a lot of reading, so that when I come out of this, I'm better able to serve other people. I'm able to perhaps have a whole new career, or kind of a portfolio career between teaching and digital marketing and stuff like that. So I always found I'm so resonating with what you're saying.
Oh, thank you. So what I'm hearing from you is that you acknowledge to yourself, hey, things are different right now. So now who will I be in this new emerging world? And you looked for a way to create an opportunity for yourself, which is exactly what we're talking about. As far as like acknowledging people in business, thanking them, a thank you card, there could be financial acknowledgement to say, this is a great job. My son has a job, and he switched his position in there, and I have seen how he has reacted to the lack of acknowledgement. The new position came with a higher pay rate, which he did not get when he changed jobs. So lack of acknowledgement is pretty painful. Let's see, let's go forward. I want to make sure that I stay on time here. Here's a question. Is agreement necessary to acknowledge? Sean is shaking her head. My answer is no. You do not have to agree with someone's analysis to acknowledge the process that they're going through. They may have come to certain conclusions on their own, which you do not have to agree with. But if you listen to understand, you can acknowledge, agree with who or what. Okay, so let's say somebody is, excuse me, talking with you and they're expressing a lot of pain, and then they express an opinion about, I mean, we've seen this with some of the demonstrations that have been happening. So do we have to agree with what that person is, how that person is responding to their pain or their experience? No. But we can acknowledge that they are going through a difficult time and that they do have feelings and thoughts that need to be cared for. Let's see. So I'm kind of mixing the culture, the business, and the personal life here. When we don't acknowledge, our silence may be perceived as, you don't matter, I don't believe in you, your experience doesn't count. However, when we do acknowledge, we're saying, thank you, you matter, I believe in you, and you are valuable. Okay. I had this experience with my neighbor. I made a comment to my neighbor who has different ideas than I have. And so what that did is led to a conversation where he basically told me a lot of his life story, which I had no idea about, including his experiences in education early on. A teacher didn't like him, so she put him in special ed, and he was in like severe and profound special ed where he shouldn't have been there for about 7 years. So the system failed him in that way. So I acknowledged what he had gone through. I acknowledged a lot of the other things he was talking about with me. Okay, where are we? Again, acknowledgement is a gift. And I hope that as we go through this, I'm acknowledging you and what you're going through as we keep talking. So the second, connection changed in 2020. Here's how I see this. Acknowledgement leads to trust. If someone feels acknowledged, they will probably be more open to trusting you. And that trust can build a connection. So it's kind of like a step-by-step process. We can acknowledge what our customers are going through. We can acknowledge the confusion and chaotic lifestyle that they are going through. If we don't talk about it, again, it's like business as usual. We can appear to be somewhat cold or calloused. Like Jim was saying earlier, have a little more patience with people. Everybody can use that. Having patience is a form of acknowledgement. Again, with connection, the need is the same. We all need connection. Even introverts need connection. I've seen some introverts in my circles that have expressed how it is so difficult for them. They're like, wow, I never thought I would be saying this, but I'm feeling like I'm missing connection right now, and I'm concerned. So the vehicles for connection, thank you, Zoom, for connecting us. There's a lot of other vehicles that have come up. I found that I called my friends and family during lockdown a lot more. So I was able to keep connecting with the time that I had that I didn't have before. See, how have you been connecting? We've heard from Sean about connecting with her family. How about some others? You can put it in the chat. Let's see. And it's something to think about, even if no one has something to say right now. We can move on and we can circle back to this. Connecting in business, practicing curiosity. So let's say you have some customers and they are going through this collective trauma together. This is the time to reach out and get curious about what is happening for them. As you do that, you're going to create opportunities together. You'll find ways to serve those customers that you might not have thought of before. Let's see. We can extend that to our personal lives as well. So how about this? Think about this, and when you think of it, whenever it is, what is one way you will commit to connecting in the next 7 days? If you just promise yourself that, oh yeah, I'm going to connect sometime, it might get pushed under the rug or you might forget. So in the next 7 days, what's something you will commit to for the purpose of connection? Yes, Brandon.
Well, it kind of merges both questions that you just had about connection. At the beginning of the lockdown, I made it a point every day as part of my startup routine is to email or send a Blue Mountain card to friends, family, or mentors, whoever, and I did that. I got out of practice for a month or two, but now I'm back in it, and it just makes all the difference to me. And I sometimes I get people on LinkedIn saying thank you, and sometimes it doesn't, but you know, it's the action that counts.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Love it.
Kind of similar to Brandon. I'm secretary of a couple of. I'm very active in the Shriners locally, and I'm secretary for a couple of groups, and we have some older members. I mean, admittedly, and so kind of similar to Brandon, I've just kind of made it a point every day to call a couple of guys. How are they doing? Especially after the storm, because
Right.
we have a couple of fellows who had some pretty severe damage to their home, and you know, are you doing all right? Is there anything you need? I mean, could 3 or 4 of us help with anything? And some just, how you doing?
Thank you both for sharing that. I have determined to go live on Facebook in the next 7 days to practice what I preach here. And also, this very meeting, being here, is part of the connecting that I'm talking about. So thank you again for this opportunity. Okay, the T. So we have had, Brandon says, what do you plan to do on Facebook? I'll get to that. Yes. Try something new. Everything is a test. In business, a coach of mine says that you act first and then you make it better. So you try something, and then in the process of doing that, that's when you get better, get more perfect. Whereas recovering perfectionists such as myself, we want to have everything perfect before we start, but we don't know how it's going to be perfect until after we put something out there. So everything is a test. it's time to try something new. My 2020 business experience, I was meeting people, I was going to 1 Million Cups, I was doing a lot of different things to connect with people, and then everything kind of shut down. And it really messed with my head a little bit. But as we came out of a few days, a few weeks, I thought, maybe it's time to fire up the online Spanish classes that I had started a long time ago, but did not continue. I'm a Spanish teacher by trade and became a coach afterwards, but I had been thinking, why don't I just offer a few Spanish classes online? And it led to a lot of different things. I found some students to teach over the summer. We had a great time. We told stories. One of the students connected with his grandfather who spoke Spanish and has dementia. And so he was able to create a bridge there with the Spanish that he learned. Touched my heart. So, and now as I go forward, I decided I am going to keep doing online Spanish classes. So that was something new, but it was actually something that I brought from my past into my present. And then I started to realize how similar I feel, how coaching and teaching another language, they're all a process of communication and personal development. So when I teach young students, I consider them my clients. We're trying something, we're testing, we're learning, and it all fits together, at least in my mind. So moving on, as you connect with people, connect with customers or potential customers, find out what they're thinking. Get curious, find out what they feel their needs are, find out what they're craving. Chances are, if you ask non-invasive questions to open the door, people are craving the opportunity to speak, and you as a listener can learn so much. And then once you have that, probably new opportunities will arise to try something new. Test it out, see if it works. Not everything you test will be something you continue, but why not try it and find a new path? Here are some things that I've seen people are doing that's new for them. New rates for familiar services. I follow Donald Miller, Story Brand, Building a Story Brand, great book, highly recommend it. He does this 3-day workshop in Nashville, and it's normally thousands of dollars, but he's offering that right now intermittently during lockdown for much less cost. And then of course your travel and your travel expenses will not be there. So new rates for familiar services. He pivoted and did the same thing, but just in a different way. A new kind of service to offer, or new kinds of delivery for familiar services, such as a piano teacher offering online or Google Duo piano classes. There could also be new products, experiences that you could offer as a business person. Brandon, you're probably, hopefully your wheels are turning. What I plan to do on Facebook is talk about language learning and how communication and curiosity help you to be a better person. I have to work on my actual message, so I will hold myself accountable to that. And if you friend me on Facebook, you can ask me. Did you do? Where is it? Okay, here we go. Let's see. And I'm just going to run through. I have a lot of questions on these slides, so as you hear these questions, whatever resonates with you, put it into the chat. And then we'll talk about it after I get through the next few slides. So how has this new mode affected our opportunities? We talked a little bit about that. Bottom lines, our creativity. What about our daily habits? Brandon has spoken to that. Pace of life, we've heard from Sean on this. Relationships. What about our attitude? I'll say it how I wish I had it on the slide. Our mental health and our motivation. And then what about our future goals? So my experience with the power outage was all my mental energy, all of my thinking was devoted to getting through that day and planning the next few hours. That was not the time right then to think about future goals and where I was going. I mean, I could, but looming in my mind, it was far more important to get through the day. So when my son was coming to me, it was like, I was amazed at how he was sort of unaffected by all this. He's like, Mom, can we work on my resume? I need to apply for this job. And I said, okay, we can handwrite some ideas on your resume. But he was all on future goals. People respond differently to this chaotic world. It's important to acknowledge that we need that time to rest. And then now that the dust has sort of settled, we're not sure, now it's time to start thinking again about where are we going? And like Brandon said earlier, who do I want to be? What do I want to be doing? So flipping back, how have you been affected? Okay, yes. Sean says, I wish I had Brandon's doer approach through this. I struggled with my motivation and mental health. I worry about my son's last year. Yes. Mom worries. Getting back into a routine and allowing myself to live through that time in my life is making me more motivated to make improvements in my personal health again, finding me again. Thank you for sharing that, Sean. I bet a lot of us feel the same way. I know I can resonate with what Sean is saying. Okay, so here's another challenge. What new thing will you try in the next 7 days? Also, it doesn't have to be something you do. It can be thinking a new thought. In my educational life, I follow an educator from the late 1800s, early 1900s who said, a morning without a new thought is a wasted morning. Where are we looking for those new thoughts? A new thought you could think of something that you might want to do, and the manifestation of it could come 3 to 6 months later, but it starts with that new thought. So I encourage you to share something, think of something new that you will try in the next 7 days, whether it's a thought, a word, or an action. And I invite you to put that in the chat if you so desire. So finally, let's act to finish 2020 strong. Let's plan to make the most of our time. After all, we are not even out of Q3. We still have fourth quarter. We still have 3 months left of this year. Okay, if this were a football game, we'd just be gearing up for the fourth quarter. We have an election to get through. So now is not the time to hide or wait it out or expect our external circumstances to create something better for us. Now is the time to prepare for the next steps. Whatever that looks like to you. It's not going to look the same for all of us. I acknowledge that. And as we do that, let's remember to acknowledge, connect, and try something new. And then this is my contact information. Andrea Happel, Andrea@AndreaHappel.com. This is my cell phone number. I encourage you to text rather than leave a voicemail. I check my voicemail on my cell phone probably about once every 6 months. Exaggeration, but text is much more likely to get through. Tries checking my voicemail. And here we are at the end, so I'm stopping the share. And at this point, Michelle, do we have time for a few Q&A or discussion points? Any takeaways that people have?
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, how do you go from survival mode to motivation mode?
That's an excellent question. I don't think it happens right away. I think that is a part of acknowledging yourself and where you are in the survival mode and taking care, attending to what needs you have at that moment. It's kind of like if you're on the battlefield and somebody cuts off your arm, you may not be motivated to fight at that moment, regardless of the movies. You're probably going to need to take some time to recover and breathe from that injury and then rejuvenate and find the support that you need to help you rejuvenate. How does that sound?
Well, of course I don't have the patience, but I'm just kidding.
Well, tell me a little bit more. What's
I don't really mean, I mean, I think it resonates for all of us. I think that everybody's at a different stage. You know, that some people are in a survival mode. Some people, I mean, Brandon, you're killing me. You're way more motivated than myself here. So kudos to you. But no, I just think that at some point we're going to have to reflect on this year. And I think about Sean, and there's part of me that, you know, it's like, fast forward, let's get to that 2021, because, you know, but then Sean doesn't want to fast forward the year. Her son is a senior. Like, that's the last thing you want to do is for this year to go fast. So, you know, there's like this let's hurry up and get through it. But what are we hurrying up to get through? And anyway, so I don't know. I think some people are still in a survival mode. I'm not necessarily saying that that's where I am. I think maybe I go back and forth sometimes, but
right.
How do you pass through that? And maybe there is no end all. Maybe it's not. You go from one to the other. Maybe you do bounce back and forth.
There's some toggling that'll happen. I'll be transparent and say, during the time that I was putting together I had a need to connect. During the time I was putting together my Spanish with Andrea, I asked myself a few times, I'm like, why am I doing this? And I wondered if maybe I was bypassing some of the emotion that I was feeling about the whole year and using my creativity as a way to escape from what I was going through. It could be. I mean, it worked, but it's something to think about. How do I respond to this crisis and this chaos? Oh, I know, I'll just escape and try something new. Putting that out there.
I did like the beginning. I had shared with Nick and Emily earlier. Actually, our sermon this week at church was about dealing with your grief. You know, kind of it's called the other side of chaos. But basically, taking the time to go through that grief process, whatever that looks like for you. Because if you don't, like you said, it will come out on the other end, where in whatever fashion that is and whatnot. So I did appreciate that, because I think, like you just said, am I masking by being creative and, moving on to something else without pausing? So I think that goes a long way. And Brennan, I need to start to meditate like yourself.
A few moments of silence to start the day is a great thing. Brandon.
Well, I want to say thank you so much to Michelle and Sean for all the wonderful, kind comments. But honestly, in terms of motivational and mental health, it's been abysmal, actually. The lockdown was, I've been dealing with divorce and unemployment before the lockdown ever happened. So I might sound like I'm in a better position, but I wanted to add, or kind of comment and say that what's helped me is ask not just who do you want to be, but who are you? And there's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he talks about that every decision is a vote for your future self. But it's also, for me, come back to having a sense of what are your values? What do you value? What do you cherish? So what helps me, I don't rely on motivation anymore, because it comes and it goes. What helps me is, well, who am I and who do I want to be? So I value, and then I put it in terms of health. I'm a person who values health. So I'm going to work out, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes. I value my sanity, or I value sanity. So I'm going to meditate, even if it's just for 5 minutes. And that kind of helps me, especially when you're depressed or something like that, because again, there's something empowering, just if it's just 5 minutes. So it sounds like I'm a doer, and I've gotten clear about my values and then developed a sense of mission out of that. I don't know if that helps anybody.
Is great. I love that. It connects to a meeting that I was at last Thursday, where we had a speaker with International Coach Federation of Iowa. Our speaker talked about exactly that thing of starting very small. And I wish I could remember the name. I can email it when I find it, because I took notes. But this researcher said, well, what if I just do a couple push-ups every time I pee? Like every time I go to the bathroom, I'll just do 1 or 2 push-ups. And then what he found was, it was called habit stacking. So he created this habit of doing that.
Right.
And it was a trigger to perform a certain action. And then he found out he was doing a lot more. And then he started doing research about, will this work for other people too? And it did. Right. So it's the power of starting something very small. I know for myself, it's like, well, I can't work out for 30 minutes. So then what? Do I just not work out at all? Or do I take like 1 walk around my cul-de-sac for 4 minutes?
Right. But for me, it starts with, and I know habit stacking, that's what I was doing. But what it really starts is getting serious about, what are your values?
Right.
And then saying, I'm a person who values X. Now, how would I, even if it's just for 5 minutes, how would I manifest or embody that? And then it starts to look like a doer, even if it's 5 minutes long.
Well, that's the secret of your doer, Brendan.
That's the secret of my doer. Yeah.
Yeah. Other comments, other takeaways?
I heard you earlier in your presentation make a comment about understanding first. And years ago, actually, when I was teaching, used to do a lot of references and actually attended a Stephen Covey training. And, I think that's of the, 7 habits that Stephen Covey wrote about. That's probably one that gets pushed back a little bit, but really needs to be brought to the forefront, because it really makes a difference when you try to understand others' views and opinions and where they're coming from first, as opposed to, of which I know I've been guilty of, just, I already know what the solution is, so let's just do it. So I think that's one thing that I've really tried to put in front of myself to work on, to, I'll say, take that time to understand first. Doesn't mean I'm going to always agree.
Right.
But I'm going to try to understand maybe where you're coming from, Andrea, or Nick, and make sure that, I can digest that first before I make, statements
Or judgments.
or judgments. Sure.
So, apply that politically. For me, it's less important who people vote for and more important about what they're thinking and what leads them to make those choices. And I always look for common ground. We can connect on this and this. Now, what action does that lead me to versus what action does that lead you to? That can vary, but it has been really powerful to practice that in communicating with people and just find out where they're coming from. There's a lot of questions that aren't being asked. Other thoughts, comments, tomatoes? You can't throw a tomato at me through the screen.
Emoji tomato, I think. I don't know. One of the things I've just been thinking about is just, you used talked about the acknowledgement thing. I just wrote a brief little column for an upcoming newsletter, and I used weird words like grace and empathy and triggers, and like just not probably words that someone like me would use very often, but I think acknowledging what we all have been through over the past several months, I've felt like an experience is pretty important. I talked about how I was literally sitting right here on Tuesday. So our kids are the every other day thing here for the next couple of weeks, and so this is the other day. So the kids are somewhere in the house here right now. And I was sitting here, window open, and the power went off, and the neighbor's generator kicked on, and that was a trigger that just like set me off. The rest of the day, I was angry. I was, short fused. Mom got home and the kids were like, something's wrong with Dad. And I think, that just hearing the sound of a generator in the neighborhood, after that, I said to my wife, I'm like, that really hit something, and I think we just have to all be mindful of just the circumstances we've been through, and aware of when we have instances like I experienced on Tuesday, that like that's real stuff, and probably for a lot of us, stuff that not in my lifetime have I necessarily experienced a circumstance or a situation that following created, I use that word, a trigger like that. So
that's kind of a PTSD response, isn't it?
Absolutely. I use that phrase. Yep. That's what it was. And so it's just very interesting, but I think it's very important to just acknowledging that those things are real for some of us for the first time ever. That's an important thing to be aware of.
I'm the same way, Nick. I was sitting here in my office and the power went out, and man, it just right away I'm thinking, oh God, not again. Yeah, so it definitely a trigger.
Well, and I think too, like Iowans and Midwesterners, like what I've heard time and time again is, well, I'm so fortunate because I, can still live in my home, and I, only had power out for a week, and some people had it out, and you have like almost like survivor's guilt in the way of like, well, my situation, I can't even be happy about my power being on because there's people that are living in a tent right now, and how do I rectify my own feelings, and how can I be sad about my situation because so many others have it so much worse. And I think that like acknowledging our own feelings, our grief, and that our situations are important, and it you can't compare your current, like the tragedy or the experience you had with someone else's, because yours is yours, and you have every right to feel however that made you feel, and should never feel like your emotions or your thoughts and feelings are less than or not justified just because your destruction was less than someone else's, because we all lived through it and had our own personal losses in one way or another. And
Yes.
I think that's what I hear over and over, like on Facebook and social media, like, we are a group of people that we support our village, and we all kind of responded and went into action, but we all, had different levels of our own like grief that we went through. And when you see others struggling so much more with their losses, it really is like hard to feel okay and at peace with acknowledging your own sadness and loss. Because I think we are just built that way. We were raised that way to, care about other people, and to put, to have perspective, and we're going to get through it, and it's all going to be fine. And I think sitting in that and acknowledging it is super important to us being able to get out of survival mode and move forward too, like Michelle was saying, because I feel like, with COVID and everything, like I'm a emotional person by nature, I think. And I didn't cry for like the longest time. I wasn't allowing myself to like feel like an emotion about the situation. And it took some other, not right now. Okay. Sorry. My son's trying to do his school learning and he can apparently hear me, but it's like you realize that you're like, wow, it's okay for me to have sadness, and I think I had to feel those emotions. And like it hit me with my son having like senior night and some of those kind of things. Then it was like, wow, like I've bottled all this up because I thought I had to be strong, and I had to be that survivor, and I had to be the strong friend for other people going through so much more. But you have to acknowledge it for yourself first so that you can be better for other people.
One of the most powerful statements from a coach that I am working with right now: you're allowed to feel all the feelings that go with this. I've seen a lot of survivor's guilt, and it reminds me of that. If you've ever watched Bedtime Stories with your kid with Adam Sandler, so remember when he accidentally sprays somebody in the eye with that fireproofing, that flame retardant, and then he feels really bad about it, so he sprays himself in the eye. Oh, well, that didn't really help the other guy, did it? We don't want to, it's normal to feel guilty, but then what do we do with the fact that we do have resources and energy? Then we can use that, direct that to respond to others.